Hey, Brad Burud, Flames Unfiltered. Time for another Flames Unfiltered Shorts. As MacKenzie Weegar signs an 8-year, $6.25 million contract extension with the Calgary Flames. And the trade puzzle is complete. A trade that when Matthew Tkachuk was sent to Florida, many people thought, they've got to sign one of the two to make this successful. Well, how about 2 for 2? Pretty important signing for the Flames. One that many in Calgary thought would happen. With the time limit that Weegar gave before the regular season, it got a little bit hairy, but Brad Treliving worked his magic and got MacKenzie Weegar in at a contract that I feel suits his play and also suits the team long term. Full no move clause, I believe it's the first 4 years, and then it's a 10-team no trade for the remaining 4 years of the 8-year contract. Weegar happy to be in Calgary and puts to bed the notion that players don't want to sign in Calgary. With Huberdeau getting locked up, now Weegar getting locked up, Tanev, all these guys, Markstrom, the list goes on and on, that have decided to stay in Calgary long term, puts to bed that. It also shows that players, a lot of players, not all, a lot of them want to win. And Calgary right now is in win mode. And boy, I couldn't be happier to have MacKenzie Weegar in this defensive core. One of a defensive core that I look at and think it's probably a top 3, top 2, possibly defensive pairings in the National Hockey League. And I think it's hard to argue that. And, you look back at this trade, and Matthew Tkachuk goes to Florida with a conditional 4th in 2025 and signs an 8-year, $9.5 million contract. Higher than I would have wanted to give Tkachuk, although I thought Tkachuk was a good player. I was frustrated with a couple things of his game, but you know what? I could probably say that about every guy, with the exception of a couple. So we lose him. We lose Gaudreau to Columbus for nothing, and we thought it was doomsday. You look at what we acquire in this trade. So we lose Tkachuk in a 2025 4th rounder. We get Jonathan Huberdeau, proceed to sign. You get him for 1 year at $5.9 million, which is critical. And then we get him in 8 years at 10.5, maybe $1 million. No, I would even say that $500,000 over market value. That's tough to say because, he's an elite passer. Actually had more assists than any left wing in the history of hockey last year. How do you argue that? So, a good contract there. We get MacKenzie Weegar at 1 year at $3.25 million, which is critical for this year. And then get him at 8 years, $6.25, which I think is a very fair contract for both. We get Cole Schwindt, a prospect that I thought looked very good in training camp. I think he will be an NHL hockey player. I don't know that it's this year, but I think in the next 2 years, I would not be surprised if Cole Schwindt is in our centers. And then a conditional 2025 first rounder. And that first rounder is really important because that first rounder is what we sent with Sean Monahan to Montreal to make the Kadri signing possible. So this is just a big trade puzzle that now with Weegar's signing completes that puzzle. Something that I don't think a lot of the hockey world thought would happen. Honestly, something I didn't think would happen when it first went down. I thought if we got one of Huberdeau or Weegar signed, I thought maybe we'd have an easier time with Weegar and probably lose Huberdeau. But now we've got both, and all things are good. So going out at the end of the year, we got Tkachuk, Gaudreau, Monahan. We have Huberdeau, Weegar, Kadri, Cole Schwindt week in. The conditional first round that we traded away, that was a wash. This is a huge win for the Calgary Flames. Weegar, a defenseman that's going to add huge depth, can probably play top pairing minutes, is going to get power play time. Pretty much, can play both sides. He's a right-handed shot that can play both sides, which is critical too. Was a great defenseman for a successful Florida Panthers team, a team that people have already forgotten won the President's Trophy last year. These guys are winners. These guys are good hockey players. And I also think they'll fit into the Daryl Sutter system. Another news yesterday is Daryl Sutter signing. And we're going to talk about that more on Wednesday night's edition of Flames Unfiltered. Join Kyle Lewis and I. We host the show. It's every Wednesday night we record. It drops Thursday mornings for Flames fans, just in time for the opening game against the Colorado Avalanche Thursday night. And all kinds of news in Calgary this week. Tons to talk about. We're going to talk about Valimaki, Sutter. We'll touch on this Weegar thing. We're going to talk about what concerns we have headed into this season that gets underway Thursday night with the Stanley Cup champions coming to town. MacKenzie Weegar signs 8 years, $6.25 million. It is the final piece of the puzzle of the trade of the century in Calgary, the trade of the 2 centuries in Calgary, and quite honestly, one of the biggest trades in the last 10 years in the National Hockey League. He turned a disaster summer into the biggest blessing that Calgary could have ever had. It's amazing what has happened. And I think that maybe now that we got all the players locked up, we got Sutter locked up, ownership, hello, get Brad Treliving locked up. He's done his job. He has saved the Calgary Flames season this summer. Now everything looks good on paper. Let's see how it correlates onto the ice Thursday night. Join us for another edition of Flames Unfiltered. Kyle Lewis and I will have that drop next Thursday. Lots to talk about in Calgary. Lots of anticipation and lots of good things coming this year in Calgary.